Hello everyone, welcome to our channel Simplified Computer Science Concepts by Professor Rutuja. Today I will be talking about contiguous file allocation method in operating system. So let us start. Before starting, let us try and understand what is file allocation. So file allocation defines how the files are stored in the disk blocks. So if you just look at this is a file and this is the structure of the hard disk. So file is divided into equal size of blocks and the hard disk is divided into tracks and sectors. So tracks are nothing but the circular positions and sectors are nothing but this triangular or we can say wedge-like structures on the hard disk. So here file allocation methods are used to place the files on the hard disk and access them from the hard disk as and when required. So hard disk, as I told you, is divided into several physical sectors and the files is divided into several logical blocks. Now here, as I told, we want to map the blocks of the file to the sectors of the hard disk. That means the size of the file, block size of the file and the sector size of the hard disk should be equal. So size of the file's block should be equal to the size of hard disk's sector so that the block of the files could be loaded into the hard disk sectors. There are several file allocation methods such as contiguous allocation, linked allocation and indexed allocation. In this particular lecture, we will be focusing on contiguous allocation. So the simple English meaning of contiguous is nothing but continuous. That means in adjacent manner. So here this is the disk and let us understand how the files are allocated blocks into the disk. So here this is a directory which has multiple files into it and it has two parameters, that is the start, that means at which particular block this file will start, and how much space or how much blocks it will occupy is nothing but the length. Let us understand how RSK will take its allocation in the disk. So it will start at 0, that means at this particular block, and its length is 2, that means 1 and 2. So it will occupy block number 0 and block number 1, right? Followed by ABC. ABC starts at 11 and takes 4 length. So that means 4 blocks. So 11, 12, 13 and 14. This will be your file ABC. Then comes file XYZ which starts at 6 and takes 3 continuous blocks. So 6, 7 and 8. All are free. That means it can be occupied. So this is how contiguous file allocation method works. However, I want you to understand one more scenario wherein there is a file element which starts at 4 and its length is 4. So if we check here, 4, here it is empty, it is not occupied by any other file. That means element can occupy block number 4 and adjacent 4 blocks we need to see. So 4, 5, 6 and 7. Here 4, 5 are free. However, 6 and 7 are occupied by some other file. So this cannot be done. Element cannot occupy space in the disk. So this is the major drawback of contiguous file allocation methods. So let us understand some advantages and disadvantages of contiguous file allocation methods. The advantages are it is very easy to implement. Why it is very easy to implement? Because it refers only the blocks on the disk. Otherwise, in other methods, there are indexes and references and pointers that are taken in the consideration, and it becomes a tedious task. Comparatively, contiguous file allocation method is very easy to implement. The next advantage is that there is minimum amount of seek time. So what is seek time? So basically seek time refers to the time it takes for a disk drive's read or write head to move to a correct track on the disk. So minimizing this seek time is crucial, and this happens in this contiguous allocation method because the read write head gets proper instructions that at which particular block it has to start. So if a file ABC has a start parameter as 0, the read write head will point to 0, and this is how it requires minimum amount of seek time. The disk head movement is minimum. Yes, it is minimum because once it comes to a particular block, it understands, or it is by default, that the next few adjacent tracks it has to access. So it does not have to go from one block to the other block. However, it has to access the adjacent blocks. That is why the disk head movement is minimum. So it supports sequential as well as direct access. Why sequential access? Because if the head is at block number 0, the next blocks can be accessed sequentially. So this is sequential access. And yes, if I want to access a sector number 2, that can also be accessed by directly pointing to that particular sector on the disk. So that is why it supports both sequential as well as direct access. Let us understand some disadvantages of contiguous file allocation. So at the time of creation, the file size must be initialized. This is the major limitation of contiguous file allocation method, wherein the size of the file is static. It is not dynamic. That means it cannot be increased. It should be initialized at first itself. Then, as it is pre-initialized, the size cannot increase. Obviously, if the blocks cannot be increased, or the blocks cannot be allocated to a file, obviously its size cannot be increased. So due to its constrained allocation, it is possible that the disk would fragment internally or externally, which means that contiguous file allocation method suffers from internal fragmentation as well as external fragmentation. Why internal fragmentation? Because let's say a block, as I told you, a block is of fixed size, and if the file, let's say a block is of 5K, but the contents of the file are of 3K, so the remaining 2K are wasted. That is internal fragmentation. And how it suffers from external fragmentation? So let's say a file wants four blocks. So I'll just go back to this particular diagram and tell you. Let's say I have a file, one more file, extra file which is coming, and it requires 6 blocks for its allocation. Here, if you see, there are free 6 blocks available, that is 2, 3, 16, 17, 18, 19. However, they are not in contiguous manner. So even if 6 blocks are available, but they are not in contiguous manner, the file cannot occupy the space. So that is how it suffers from external fragmentation. So that is about the merits and demerits of contiguous file allocation methods. I hope you have understood this concept. Thank you for watching this video, and kindly like, share and subscribe to the channel. If you have any doubts, kindly comment in the comment box, and I will try to resolve the issue. Thank you everyone. Bye.